Hello, welcome to the People Profit Podcast, the show where we flip the script on traditional business thinking and prove that when you put people first, profits follow. I'm Sandra Coker, your guide on this journey to more engaged teams, loyal customers, and a healthier bottom line. These episodes are brought to you by Human Power Solutions, helping organizations unlock the human potential that powers performance. Whether you're a leader, an HR pro, or a curious change maker, buckle up. We're diving into fresh stories, real-world strategies, and a few laughs along the way. Ready to turn your workplace into a profit-powered people machine? Let's get started. Welcome back to the People Profit Podcast, where we dig into the juicy intersection of leadership, workplace culture, and yes, even moments when you realize your team might be better at reading Slack emojis than reading the room. I'm your host, Sandra Coker, and today we're diving into one of my favorite topics, leadership that actually transforms people, not just profits. Now, my guest today, I love her. She's part of the technology futurist, part human potential whisperer, and 100% of the kind of leader you wish you had during your last major reorg. Please welcome Kerrie Hoffman, CEO of Hoffman Digital, master executive coach through Focal Point, and someone who casually drops phrases like synthetic biology in conversations and still makes you feel like you're just talking to your very wise, very cool mentor. Welcome, Kerrie.
Thank you, Sandra. I'm excited to be here for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you today too. So, all right, let's dive into what makes leadership magical in today's wildly unpredictable world. Let's set up a little bit with your background, where you started your career as a medical technologist. And can you kind of give us some background about where you came from and where you are today?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. So I did start my career as a medical technologist in a lab, and I worked there for 10 years. I then worked for Johnson & Johnson for 16 years, first in sales, and then I moved into IT. And then I worked for Johnson Controls. And so I've got this 32-year career in corporate America. And for the last 8 years, I've been a serial entrepreneur. I can't seem to just do one thing. Both consulting of business or digital transformation, as well as executive coaching, which is really my passion. My passion is the executive coaching. So
I think that's why we all get along so well. Serial entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah, for sure. I actually wrote chapters in a book series in 2 different books, and the title of Business Transformation and Human Potential Expert was given to me by the publisher.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so when I wrote those chapters, one was really on digital transformation, the other one was on the power of the human mind. They're connected completely. That's the kind of title they gave me. And I'm like, wow, that's cool.
That's really cool. I love that. We're definitely going to get into that during today's conversation for sure.
Sounds good.
So, in this podcast, we're talking to a lot of our younger, less seasoned leaders, and some people are just new to leadership. So, you've made some really massive pivots from medical field to tech to coaching, right? How did you know when it was time to take that jump? What were the signs? Or did you just wake up one day and say, yep, I'm done with pipettes and moving into enterprise transformation?
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? There's actually some there's a pathway there that isn't obvious when I just say what I did. So
Yeah.
when I worked in the hospital lab, I was first of all, it was at a time where hospitals were all independent, and about 7 years into that is when these integrated delivery networks of hospitals started coming about. And so there was a lot of dynamics like before, during, and after this huge industry transformation in the hospital business. At first, we were kind of slow. And so I was always looking for things to do, like extra things to do. And I loved troubleshooting the large lab analyzers. And I loved taking lots of process, like manual things that we did. I loved taking that, simplifying it. And I was fortunate to be in a hospital that had a hospital and lab information system that they built in the late 70s. And so I was then automating simplified process with technology. And so I was
Mhm.
always doing these extra projects on the side. Um, and I had 4 roles in 10 years because I would just do this extra stuff and then they would say, "Oh, we think you'd be good over here because you're fixing all these things." So I was doing things outside of my job description.
Yeah.
And when I got bored, I knew it was time to change.
Mhm.
Or more often, I would just like fix a bunch of stuff and then people would be like, "Oh, we need you to move over here."
Gotcha.
So it
Yeah.
wasn't completely planned. It just kind of happened
Yeah.
that way.
I always move because I'm a serial entrepreneur like yourself. And when it starts feeling like work, I'm done.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sounds terrible, but that's the truth. I think I'll be doing this forever though. I love this. Um, but you describe yourself as an intrapreneur. So I love that.
Yes.
I love that term. What does it actually look like inside a big organization? And were you always the one to kind of poke the bear, with with new ideas?
Yeah, I definitely poked the bear a lot. I'm a person who actually likes change, but not for change's sake. I like to improve things.
Yeah.
And so I called myself an entrepreneur because I always ran whatever department I was in as a business. And that was kind of the culture of the lab I was in. So that was a good fit at first, but always ran my department as a business. And so that's kind of where the entrepreneur came from. And then very creative and innovative and always doing process simplification, automation with technology. So that's where that kind of entrepreneur came from.
Yeah.
The only reason it worked is because the transformations that I was making, they were improving things.
Mm,
And imagine that I was rattling a lot of cages. I was making people uncomfortable, especially peers,
yeah.
because that they didn't want to look bad. And I'm like, I'm not trying to make you look bad. Like I can help you. Like,
Right.
where
Yeah.
do you want to improve?
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of poking of the bear, but I always
Yeah.
had good results. So it was like I didn't get fired because I had good results, I guess.
Yeah. Uh, it's so interesting. I think a lot of times, this next generation, they're pretty vocal, but they're also a little bit timid of making changes.
Yeah.
They're great about like, here's my opinion and what you should do, but when it comes to, you know, getting the idea and actually doing it, it seems a little daunting a lot of times. What advice would you give a newer leader or someone that's running a department that may be managing and serving someone that's older than they are?
Yeah. So I have an interesting story from when I worked in the hospital and I had my first supervisory role. Uh, I had some ideas of changes I want to make, but I knew that my peers were saying, well, the lab manager is never going to let you do that. And I'm like, well, why not? I mean, I'm trying to improve things. Well, if it's not her idea, she won't let you do it. So I was like, well, okay. Um, so first of all, my first advice is to try small things and small improvements and test it out, so that you have some proof that it's going to work. And then
Mhm.
in the case of having this senior, leader who had tons of experience, but also had this kind of like it had to be her idea, I just would have conversations with her and lead her to the idea. So I led her to come up with the idea of what I wanted to do. And then I would be like, it's a great idea. How about if I try that? And she'd be like, yeah. And so, okay. So then my peers are like, how are you getting Marie to agree to do these things? And I'm like, well, I make it her idea. And they're like, I just lead her to the idea. And they're like, but it's your idea. And I'm like, yeah. And you guys all know that. So who cares? I'm getting to do what I want to do.
I love
So
that.
so try small things, small improvements, and then, if you run into obstacles, figure out how to get around those
Oh,
obstacles.
that's awesome. That's great advice. That is great advice. And when you talk about and that's how you transform organizations. So when you talk about like transformations kind of get stuck because you focus on culture and mentoring. That's rare, isn't it?
Yeah,
Um,
it is rare. Like there's often these huge ideas or transformations that get started from the top, and it's really hard to get them implemented because the majority of people do not like change.
right.
It's very uncomfortable. And so you have to figure out some ways to get past that. And one of the things that we teach in Focal Point is called Gleischer's formula for change. And I love this because it's really simple.
Yeah.
So the way it works is you take dissatisfaction, and if you multiply that by your vision and multiply that by some easy first steps, those three things have to be greater than resistance. And that's how you
Mm.
can overcome change. So the interesting thing is it is a multiplication formula. So if you don't do one of those three things, then you're never going to overcome the resistance. Because if you multiply by 0, you get 0.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if I just real quickly, if I step through each one of those, making sure the dissatisfaction piece is the dissatisfaction with the current way that things are going.
Yeah.
And so this is something that, like, as leaders, we often don't want to pull out of people, right? This is when people are complaining about the way it is. And
Yeah.
we often try to like, I hear you and here's what we can do. But you try to like quiet that, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you're trying to make a transformation, you need to amplify that. You need to ask, what are you dissatisfied with the way it is? Why are you dissatisfied with it? And then capture it, write it down because you're going to need it later.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to have a really clear vision for where the transformation is going to take you. And then you have to provide people with easy first steps, not like the whole project plan of how to do it, but what are some easy first steps that you can take to get there? And so these are three very important components. And all the time, you need to be looking at coaching and mentoring people because
Yeah.
in any transformation, there's a cultural change that has to take place, and the mentoring and the coaching is really important. So I mentioned I have 32 years in 3 corporations, but I had a different role every 2 or 3 years, and every time I did a massive transformation. It's just in my nature.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I left, people did not go back to the way it used to be. They kept the transformation. And it's because of all the coaching and mentoring and the focus on culture that I had to make sure that it would stick even when, I moved on to the next thing.
Because it matters so much more than automating the process, right?
Oh,
Because
yes.
I mean, we go in and we hear, we go into companies a lot and they'll talk about process improvement and continuous improvement initiatives and value stream mapping and all of those kinds of things. And I'm like, if you don't have the leaders that can sustain that, you can put all the processes together in the world. But if your culture isn't there, it's not worth, you're wasting your money. You're wasting your time.
People aren't going to do it. And even when you have all those like 3 factors that you've taken care of, the dissatisfaction, the vision, the first steps, when the going's going to get tough in any transformation. And when it does, that's when you bring back the dissatisfaction and say, yeah, but remember all the things we don't like about the current way? I know this change is painful, but here's the reason why we're doing it. It's to remove the dissatisfactions that we have. And then people are like, oh. And so this is why the total of the dissatisfaction, the vision, and the first steps has to be greater than the dissatisfaction. And then you got to remind people what they were dissatisfied about.
And those little wins, like those little wins show people that it works. And I think that's huge, I think, is just kind of setting things up in these little increments where it's like, oh, this works. And now, and suddenly you're at your goal, right?
Right.
I love
Exactly.
that. I love that. Yeah. You got this term that I was reading. I was laughing. It's the trademark, the next age, right?
The next age. Yep.
Yeah. Sounds like something that needs its own Netflix documentary. I'm just saying, docuseries, right?
I can use a TED Talk.
There you go. What does it mean, and how should leaders start preparing for it, like without like hyperventilating?
Yeah. So the next stage, it actually comes from a very strong belief that I have that we exited the industrial age back in the year 2000. That's when it started.
Yep.
And we've entered what I'm calling the next stage, but we're in the next stage now. But whether or not a company has transformed is another story. So
Right.
the industrial age had there's always a trigger when you go from one age to the next, and the trigger that leaves the industrial age and goes to the next is a just explosion in modernly architected technology.
Yeah.
And okay, this is where I get a little geeky, but newer modernly architected technology is super easy to implement, like in days and weeks, not quarters and years.
Yeah.
It's very easy to learn. You don't need a training course to learn, the new technology. And it's just super fast, not only to implement, but also to operate. And this new technology started being used around the year 2000 by digital natives like Salesforce, as an example. And they were, I love the story of Salesforce. If people don't know the story of Salesforce, it was a bunch of people from Oracle that were running the Siebel software, CRM.
Mhm.
And they felt like there was a better platform that needed to be put in place. But it's very hard to cannibalize your own software, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
they tried to internally convince Oracle that this should be done, but they weren't getting funded. So they left. They
Oh,
founded Salesforce. And they started using the
fascinating.
and they started
My
using,
son worked there, Urkel.
oh, really?
Good. Yeah.
Their whole platform is modernly architected. It can be implemented fast, right?
Right.
There's all kinds of, a lot of people know the story. Now it's gotten big as well, so it's more complex than it was in the beginning. But I would say that larger companies, so there are a lot of digitally native companies like Salesforce that started to be built. Larger companies that were born in the industrial age didn't do anything until like the early adopters were 2012. So, and we're still, I think, with large companies in the early adoption stage of
Okay.
moving to the next stage. But some of the characteristics of the next stage is a lot around kind of people's mindset. So industrial age was about scarcity. The next stage is about abundance. So
Okay.
there's an abundance of talent out there. There's an abundance of customers out there. And as long as we are starting to adopt these new ways of working or new ways of managing people or new technologies, it's not all about technology, then we can move faster. And that means that we can move faster to produce products and services that meet the needs of our customers. And so
Yeah.
this is the whole thing in the next stage. It's not about competition. It's about, can you move fast enough? And do you know your customer deep enough
Yeah.
to produce things that they need, as an example?
That's awesome. I think it's so interesting thinking about the different ages. I think we were in a meeting a couple of weeks ago and they were like, you don't actually know you're in the new age until you're in another age, until it's core, right?
That's a good point. So to get people kind of up to speed on that, before the industrial age was the agricultural age.
Mhm.
And the move to the industrial age started in the 1760s, and the trigger was machines, printing press, the steam engine. It was all these machines. And it started in the 1760s. It wasn't named until the 1800s. It wasn't named the industrial age. It took that long to name it.
I think with our tech today, we'll be able to kind of figure that out, right?
Yeah, well, I think we'll actually be in the age after the next stage before we name it.
I know, right? So that's really, I just think it's really super interesting. We'll see what happens, on how the ages get named.
Right,
So
exactly.
let's talk tech, right?
Yeah.
When we were talking and through my prep, you say we're already behind on adopting today's technology, right? And meanwhile, quantum computing and synthetic biology, and my degree's in chemistry, so I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to this stuff as well. Those things are knocking on our door, right?
Yes.
What do you
Right.
think the most common blind spot you see, leaders having around this rapidly moving technology?
Yeah, I think the biggest blind spot around the technology is thinking that you as a company don't want to be on the cutting edge of technology. So you're shy about, whatever it is, generative AI, um, digital data layers, augmented reality. Like there's all these technologies and they've been around for over 20 years. That's the thing.
Mhm. Yeah.
They're not new. People just think they're new. AI is not new. It's just that generative AI and Chat GPT came out 2 years ago, and it democratized it, if you will,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It made it available to everyone, but it's large language models and everything behind generative AI has been around for decades.
Yeah.
So the biggest blind spot is thinking that, oh, I can't adopt cutting edge things because, all the risk that's involved with that, but it's not cutting edge. So, the thing about adopting it or not adopting it, the companies that adopt the modernly architected technologies, they are 50 to 100 times faster, and that is not an exaggeration,
Sure.
than companies that are stuck on their old softwares.
Yeah.
And so you're still in the scarcity mentality at that point because every time you change a product or service, it takes a really long time. And so now you're thinking, oh, I'm competing for customers. Well, you are competing for customers because you can't change your products and services fast enough to,
Mhm.
be to be meeting your customers' needs where they're going to be in the next month or two or the next year.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of like Apple creating the iPod. Nobody asked for the iPod,
Right.
right? Nobody asked for it. They created it. So they understood their customers' pain points and they understood customers' needs without the customers asking for it. Well, you have to be nimble and fast to do that.
Yeah.
And if you're
Yeah.
not adapting the technology, changing the way your people processes work and changing the way your operations are,
Mhm.
then you're not going to be fast enough to be able to meet those customer needs.
It's really fascinating, as you think about how people don't want people I talk to, and I'm sure you talk to, and they're our age, roughly. What is, they
Yeah,
back
I
off
know.
from it. And I'm like,
Right.
all in, like, let's use it.
Well,
um,
and I also I ask people, okay, like do you use AI? No, I don't use AI. Okay. Well, like what do you use for your mappings program? Like to drive somewhere? Is it, Google Maps? Is it Waze? I'm like,
yeah,
okay, you're using AI because there's AI behind those.
right.
Like you might not know it, but you're using it. Any recommendations you get on Netflix, Prime Video, Amazon, it's all AI
Yeah,
driven. So you are using AI. The question is, how can you apply it within your company?
yeah, yeah.
And it goes for any of the technologies, not just AI. So the problem of not adopting the ones that are currently like already available is the next ones. And you started to mention them, the quantum computing, synthetic biology, and fully cognitive AI. This is when right now we're doing generative AI. It's like baby AI,
Yeah,
honestly. When we get to the point where fully cognitive means AI is as smart as the human brain, then the speed of business is going to be way faster than it is right now.
yeah,
And the real key there is quantum computing. And people argue, oh, quantum computing is never going to work. Well, you can already rent a quantum computer to
right.
do like very specific things because it's not good for everything yet, but it's getting close. And if I think quantum computing in the next 3 to 5 years will become mainstream. And if it's not quantum computing, it's going to be something else that is just as fast.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
doesn't really matter. And the
yeah,
problem is if you're not already adopting the people and the operating processes and the technology that's already mature today, your leap from traditional business to when the
yeah,
quantum computing comes out, it's too big.
right.
We're going to see tons of companies just go to the wayside if they're not, getting there and keeping up.
Yeah,
Running a business is hard. Developing your people shouldn't be. At Human Power Solutions, We act as your outsourced chief learning officer, designing custom learning and development experiences that actually move the needle. No fluff, no cookie cutter workshops, just results. Whether your people need better communication, stronger leadership, or less burnout, we provide strategic solutions that align with your goals and keep your team moving forward. Visit hpowersolutions.com and unlock your team's full potential without disrupting operations.
Wow. But we have technology, but then we also have this human technology gap, right? And you and I both very much believe in servant leadership, and that's really essential to bridge this gap. What does that actually look like on a Tuesday at 3 p.m. when your team's overwhelmed, the tech is glitching, and someone brought donuts, but only like the weird ones are left, like the coconut covered ones are left?
Yeah, that's always the case, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is where servant leadership really comes in. So to me, servant leadership is removing obstacles that are in the way of your teams getting stuff done.
Sure.
And in order to do that, you really have to understand what your employees are going through. So listening deeply to the employees and the challenges that they're having, listening to their ideas to overcome those challenges, really working through the change and transformation that needs to take place. That servant leadership is key.
Yeah.
And it's all about removing obstacles for sure.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's removing obstacles and creating the processes, like
Yes.
making sure that those processes are streamlined, as we've been talking about over the last couple hours, right? Making sure the
Right.
employees like it's clear, we know what to do. And so now, you're doing executive coaching, right?
Right.
Is there one trend or mistake that that you're seeing that keeps like even the smartest, most experienced leaders kind of stuck in that industrial age thinking?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of like common themes with people that I coach. One is just the fear of taking some risks or doing something different.
Yeah.
But that fear ends up to be there because often they're being undervalued for what they're doing today. So people who are the superstars on the front line are the ones that we promote.
Right.
And then nobody really trains them or coaches them. But besides that point,
Yeah, let's not go down that road.
we won't go down that road. Besides that point, is that, well, there's a key piece that they're not being taught that's really important. And that is that when they were a superstar front employee, everything they did was observable. So
Yes.
their supervisor knew everything they did. It was obvious. Then they get into management and they expect that everything they're doing and the value they're adding is going to be recognized.
Mhm.
And it isn't, because they're not being observed like they were before. Maybe their manager sees them an hour or two a week, and that's it.
Right.
So they actually have to talk about what they're doing and what their team is doing in order for people to see their value. So I often see people there's no way they're going to take a risk because they're already not being valued for what they're doing, and they're kind of beaten down. They might even be perceptions about them that are totally not true, and they get frustrated by it.
Mhm.
So I have to teach people how to have that elevator pitch of, hey, you run into a leader in the hallway, what do you say to him? Well, you need to say, hey, we're working on this project and I wanted to let you know this, this is the progress we're making. Or we had this great win with a customer, and they're like, but that would be bragging. That's always what they tell me. And I'm like, it's not bragging. They never see you.
Right.
So if you don't talk about it, nobody knows that it's happening and everybody assumes the worst. This is how our mind is wired.
Mhm.
We're wired to seek out the worst or to think the worst because that's what keeps us safe.
Right.
So people have to talk about it. And so I don't even think they're to the point where they can take a risk and try something new and be curious and do this continuous learning and then continuous process change. They can't even get there because they're held back about not being valued or being perceived like they're not doing anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that the leaders that are stuck in that industrial age, if they've got to start to ask what's going on,
Yeah.
right? Because but like you said, the employees are doing the work, and if they're not vocal about it, as the leader, you've got to come back and say, I'm not seeing the widget because we're not building widgets. Everything's kind of done externally. That's huge too. When you think about like the human mind versus AI and who's going to win that, right? So, all right, Kerrie. So we're going to go
Oh,
slightly woo-woo.
we're
Just for a
going woo
second,
woo. I
okay?
love going woo woo.
I know. And really the wild part of the really great part of your philosophy, the human mind is more powerful than AI. Now,
Yes.
I love this, but explain it like you're talking to a tech exec who still thinks intuition is like a brand of yoga pants.
Right. I
Yeah.
know, isn't that true? That's what people think. So even when AI gets to fully cognitive AI, the human mind is still more powerful. The
Mhm.
challenge is that we've lost the power of the human mind over really centuries and millennia. Like thousands of years ago, we were much better at this in terms of the human race. So
Yes.
everybody knows we have a conscious mind and we have a subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is like a servant. The conscious mind is like a boss. Okay. And
Okay.
so our subconscious mind will do everything that we feed it. And the challenge is, if you think about it, if you monitor your thinking, the majority of us have more negative thoughts, self-doubt,
Yeah.
self-saboteuring than we have positive thoughts. And so we're feeding our subconscious mind all this negative stuff, and the subconscious mind goes to work and makes it happen.
Right.
Okay. It will work on whatever you feed it. And so
Yeah.
you're either having your mind work for you or against you.
I
And
think
this
a
is
lot of people can relate to that.
Mhm.
A
Right.
lot
And
of people can relate to
there's
that.
things you can do to strengthen that. And every time you like, it's also how you talk about things. So in your business, if you say, oh, we don't have enough customers, then your
Yeah.
subconscious mind is going to go work on making sure you don't have enough customers.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Tracy.
Because your subconscious mind doesn't really hear the negatives either. So so instead you have to say, in the next 3 months we're going to increase our customers by 50%. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Now your subconscious mind is working on that.
Right. Yeah.
Also a simple thing is how you write your goals. Like if I say I want to lose, 50 pounds in the next, year, then your subconscious mind is probably going to have you gain 50 pounds in the next year. Why is that? Because it doesn't understand the lose part of it.
Mhm.
So instead and you also have the subconscious mind only works in the present tense. So instead you have to say, I weigh 135 pounds by the end of December. That is a
Oh,
goal that the subconscious mind, it's written in a way that the subconscious mind is going to understand that.
we could go way, like I could go
Oh,
down that road with you for a while, but
yeah. But
yeah.
there is one piece I haven't mentioned yet. And this is the piece that makes your mind more powerful than AI. And this is the real woo-woo. Our subconscious mind has access to the infinite intelligence, which
Just
is
gonna ask you about that. Yeah.
it's everything past, current, and future, everything that was ever known or is yet to be known. So, okay, this is where, how do you make this not be yoga pants woo-woo for executives? All you need to do is look at history. If you read biographies of people like Edison, Einstein, poets, great artists, all these people, a lot of these people will say that their ideas came from beyond them. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is where the subconscious mind has a connection to the infinite intelligence. And this is where like things like The Secret and synchronicities and all this comes from, is from this this fact. So the way to make it real for people is if you've ever been thinking about someone and then like out of the blue they call you. It's not out of the blue. It's because we're all connected. And so it's not out of the blue. So I have this great story. This is very common in people who are related. Okay.
Yeah.
So I had food poisoning back when I was like in my 30s, and there were no cell phones at that time.
Yeah.
And I had been in the hospital and then I was home. And anyways, I needed to go back to the emergency room. I couldn't drive. I was about 45 minutes from the hospital I wanted to go to, and it was Friday. And I know on Fridays, it was Friday, like late morning. My mom goes and gets her hair done, and then she goes out to lunch. And I'm like, I really need my mom not to go out to lunch today. I need my mom to go home so I can call her and she will answer the phone. So I am just like intensely thinking about this the whole like half hour I know she's getting her hair done. And then as soon as I know, like, okay, she'll be done and she will have driven home, I call the house phone, of course, because all we had were landlines. And she picks up the phone and she's like, oh, and I tell her what I need. And she's like, oh, it's so good that I came home. I just felt like I really needed to come home.
Wow. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah.
This is the power of the mind.
I love that. Yeah. So what's a practical ways for leaders to start building that kind of connection?
Yeah, so the most practical thing to do, I would say, is to monitor your thoughts. And every time you're thinking like negative thoughts, flip it into positive, or whenever you're thinking about what you don't want, flip it into what you want instead.
Yeah.
So, being able to flip it from, I don't have enough customers to, I want to increase customers in the next 3 months. Like those are simple things that you can do. I think monitoring the thoughts is important because you need to have more positive thoughts than negative thoughts.
Yeah, definitely.
And so making sure that you're really working on that. And when it's not that you can't have a negative thought, it's that when you do, you flip it into what you want instead, or what's the positive opposite of that negative thought. And you don't stay in the negative thought too long. And then you dwell on the positive side of it longer. That's the most practical thing you can do. I mean, it's also really important to be like in the present. I know there's a lot of stuff around like meditation or aware, just being in the present state, that type of thing. What I tell people is like I'm not good at I'm totally into all this stuff, but I'm really not a good meditator. So you have to find the thing that works for you.
Yeah.
And when you're in the state you need to be in, it's when you're in what's called a flow state.
Yeah.
Where time goes away, where you lose track of time and you're just like completely observing the present.
Yeah.
So it can be as simple as go outside and observe the trees, observe nature. Like for me, it's walking out in nature. That's better for me than I'm not very good at meditating. So I'm really good at that. Or doing art, going for a bike ride, sports. Like people think about when you're in a flow state and do more of that. I think we just need to keep it simple.
And my producer's thinking Sandy's going to jump on a motorcycle. That's where the flow state is.
Right.
So you said this is the topic of your next book. Do you want to give us a little sneak peek? And what do you have to spark in leaders?
So the book series I wrote in is Brilliant Breakthroughs for the Small Business Owner. And I wrote in volume 3, chapter 6, and it was on like digital transformation and the 5 aspects of a digitally expanded mindset. And then, but I hinted at the power of the human mind. And so when I wrote in volume 5, I wrote the last chapter. It was the last volume, last chapter. It's the power of the human mind. And so my book is going to expand on that chapter, and it's going to be a full book on the power of the human mind. It has 3 parts to it. The first part is history, because we go back millennia in terms of the history of the power of the human mind. The
Yeah.
middle part, the second part, part 2, is going to be about the science. So there's a huge advancement in science in quantum physics, which it sounds all difficult. It's not really that difficult. And our ability to measure energy and magnetic fields of the human body is actually putting science behind the woo-woo. It's not all as woo-woo as we thought, because science
Yeah.
is now able to measure it. So that's part 2. And then part 3, the last part, are going to be all the things that you can do. What are all the different tools or things that you can do to make sure that you are being in the present, being in that flow state? And I'm going to give all kinds of options for doing it.
I love that.
Because some of us, everyone's going to have different things that work for them, number one. And then there's those of us who just get bored and we need to rotate what we're doing.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
me for sure.
I'm with you on that. All right. So we're going to come off the woo a little bit and talk about your companies that are in the middle of big shifts, the culturally, structurally, digitally, all that practical kind of work stuff. What's one myth about transformation in the workplace that drives you crazy?
Ooh, that's a good question. A myth about transformation in the workplace that drives me crazy. I would say that the biggest myth to me is that we're like in the 4th industrial revolution. That's just like, that's
Yeah.
a huge myth to me, because that's all about doing more with less. That's all about like work faster. And that's a myth. Like
Yeah.
the work faster, work harder is a myth. And so to think that if we work faster and harder, we don't have to make huge changes, to me, that really is holding companies back.
Right.
And so I really think people need to not just work on one thing. There's 4 things that people need to address to make the transformation. One is what we call extreme customer centricity, which is really understanding your customer deeply. And then the other 3 are just the keys to unlock the velocity that you need in business. And
Yeah.
one is your people and your workforce and the different alternate ways that you can be in the workforce. The second one is how you operate needs to differ, and then the technology. So the myth is that you can do it without the transformation. You have
You
to
can't.
transform.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. And so, you've also created high performing teams that work hard and they have fun, right? Are there ingredients
Yes.
of that secret sauce?
So yeah, with anyone who worked for me in my corporate career over those 32 years, they would end up saying, "Oh my God, I've never worked harder, but I've never had more fun."
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, and the secret was, yeah, I'm pushing all this change, but I'm following that formula of making sure we understand dissatisfaction with current state. As a
Mhm.
leader, having a really clear vision of where we need to go, and
Yeah.
then providing those easy first steps. That's all about servant leadership
Yeah.
and listening to people and helping them along the way. I once took a team from a waterfall project management process to an agile process, and we needed to do it really fast. And so there was a point where everyone was trying to do hybrid agile, half waterfall, half agile. And
Oh,
I'm like,
geez. Yeah. Oh,
this is bad
yeah.
news. So I'm like, look,
Yeah.
that's it. There's no such thing as hybrid agile. It doesn't work. So I'm throwing you in the deep end, and you see there's sink or swim. And they all looked at me like, what? Because I'm like servant leader. I'm like, it's
Yeah.
sink or swim. I said, but here's the thing. I'm giving you all of these lifeboats, life preservers. I'm giving you so many tools. You just need to use them.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, servant leadership doesn't mean be easy on people.
Right.
It
Yes.
means providing them the tools, the support, the just, emotional support, hearing them out. It's about pushing people hard, but giving them the tools and the support they need to get there.
100%. That's perfect. Because so many people think servant leadership is a little woo woo. And it's like, no, you're providing clarity, tools, the things that people need to do their jobs, So, you know, What would you say to a leader right now who might be thinking, God, this sounds great. I really want to inspire people, but I'm burnt out. I don't have time to mentor. AI might take my job. All those things. Like, what's the first small step that someone could take today?
I think the first small step that people can take is to really look at everything they do today as, in their job and figure out the 80% that's really not making a difference.
Mm.
It's only 20% of what you're doing, unless you've really worked on this. Only 20% is really adding value or making a difference or really getting you to your goals. So
Yeah.
how do you stop doing the 80%? Or the 80% you either have to stop or delegate. Or automate.
Yeah.
That's what you need to do with the 80%. And so you've got to do that so that you're not burnt out. That's the first piece, because you really need to simplify your own workday and what you're
And
doing.
the automation can be daunting unless you have someone that knows how to do it. Because it can
Yeah.
be, if you're a leader, entrepreneur, business owner, when you think about automation, you're like, oh, that's not my thing. And I'm always like, find someone that can do that for you, right? Instead
Right.
of you spending
Yeah.
hours and hours trying to figure that out. But I think you're absolutely right.
Well,
I feel like
you need to be curious too. You
yeah,
need to be a continuous learner, because that is so true that automation used to be difficult.
yeah,
But automation isn't as difficult as it used to be. So there's things that you can learn that are do-it-yourself automation. So it's kind of, and it was even before like Chat GPT came out, and now all the other,
yeah,
generative AIs that are out there, it doesn't matter which one you use. Before that, there were like a lot of corporations are using Microsoft, right? So Microsoft Outlook. There were quick steps and there were rules. There are things available that for an everyday user to use to automate. So like I can do my email in 30 minutes to an hour a day. If I'm an hour, only if I'm really doing some deep email work. But I can do it that fast because I have all these quick steps and rules, and um and I look at every email. So I can't stand this. Oh, I have 600 emails in my inbox and I just can never get to it. Oh my God. Like I look at every single email, but it's for a fraction of a second,
yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
it.
yeah. That's fascinating. And you just caught me in some industrial thinking. Like, I'm like, it's so hard. You just caught me there. I gotta flip it's easy to automate. I just told my subconscious brain, let's just automate everything.
Flip the thinking. I love it.
So I feel like we just scratched the surface, and
Yeah.
yet my brain is spinning in like the best way possible. Before we go today, can you share with our listeners how they can keep learning from you, if you know what the name of your new book is going to be, and like how they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, haven't fully decided the name of the book yet, so we'll put that one on hold. But you can find me on LinkedIn. It's LinkedIn and then Kerrie A. Hoffman, because there's more than one. Or you can find me through my website, hoffmandigital.com. Actually, is an umbrella website for the different businesses that I have. So you
Nice.
can find me that way as well.
That's awesome. So for our audience, if you take anything away from this conversation, it's that the future isn't about robots replacing people.
Nope.
It's about reclaiming the magic of being human and leading from a place of purpose, curiosity, and possibility. Kerrie, thank you for blowing our minds and expanding our hearts today.
Well,
All
thank
right,
you for
folks.
having me.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Great conversation. That's a wrap on this episode of the People Profit Podcast. If you found a nugget of wisdom or even just a spark of inspiration, share the love, subscribe, leave us a review, and pass the episode along to a colleague who's ready to build a people-first culture. Big thanks to our sponsor, Human Power Solutions, for championing workplace where humans thrive and profits rise. Want to learn how they can energize your team? Head over to hpowersolutions.com to get started. I'm Sandra Coker, reminding you that when you invest in people, you invest in profit. See you next time.